I'm 22 female, working for a non-profit and a volunteer couple, 20s/female and 30s male, wants a with me. They creep me out and their behavior is starting to scare me. I've been at this small non-profit organization for under a year now, hired fresh out of college, and I am an event coordinator. My organization has a large event that lasts throughout the summer and into fall to raise money for our funding and, hence, we need a healthy supply of volunteers to operate efficiently. I get along well with all the volunteers and have never had a problem arise, until now. When I was first hired, I was introduced to a loyal volunteer for my organization who we'll call Ryan, 30s. I was a little wary of him at first because of the vibe I got from him, but he was nice, so I let it go. Ryan would constantly help me out with things for our large fundraising event that I couldn't do myself and was very helpful with educating me about the behind-the-scenes elements of this event. I was appreciative of his advice, but thought nothing more of him than simply a volunteer. Weird thing number 1, fast forward to around a month after this event begins, and Ryan starts showing up more and more, unannounced, at my office. He would stop by and visit my boss, 50s male, briefly, who he's apparently friends with, and would then come to my office and visit me. Each time Ryan visits my office, I tell him that I'd love to talk, but I have work to do. Instead of leaving when I say this, Ryan pulls out his laptop, or his phone, a book, etc., and just sits there while still facing me right in front of my desk, sometimes for hours at a time. I can't figure out how to get him to leave, or say that it makes me uncomfortable, and he just sits there. Even if I leave my office, he'll still be sitting there when I return. Weird thing number 2, Ryan has a girlfriend who we'll call Mandy, 20s female. Prior to dating Ryan, Mandy strictly dated women and still prefers women from what Ryan has told me. From what I've heard from Ryan, he met Mandy at his university and she began studying abroad in Asia in the beginning of the year. Mandy returned from Asia mid-summer and began joining Ryan in volunteering for my organization's event, loyally. So far, she's been a nice girl, but she creeps me out like Ryan does. I constantly catch her checking me out. She will touch me on my hands, shoulders, and back constantly. Now, I don't have a problem at all with her being or her checking me out, but it bothers me when I'm touched. I've told her this before and nicely asked her to stop, but English is not her first language and she is not the best English speaker. I've relayed this concern to Ryan multiple times and he said, "Oh yeah, I talked to her about it, but I don't think she understood. I'll talk to her again." I don't buy that since she seems to understand everything else I tell her. Weird thing number 3, the thing that really scares me about Ryan and Mandy is that they follow me everywhere I go at this event. When they aren't actually volunteering at the event, they follow me and Ryan encourages it. They literally shadow me everywhere holding hands together like the 2 twin girls in The Shining. This behavior is now starting to continue after dark when we're breaking everything down. I'm trying to avoid being alone with them at night, but it's getting harder and harder to avoid. Weird thing number 4, okay, so to the actual part, Reddit. They have not said this directly to me, but one of the other volunteers gave me a heads up that Ryan and Mandy wanted a with me. I brushed it off at first because the volunteer I heard it from is a very gossipy person, and has been known to cause drama. But 1 week later, my good friend Sarah, 20 female, very credible, was entertaining for the event and told me that Ryan admitted to her while he was helping set up her equipment that he had the hots for me and he and Mandy want it to happen, soon. Sarah also told me that I needed to watch my back with Ryan and Mandy and never be alone with them. Needless to say, I became much more concerned since hearing about that because Sarah never says things like this and neither Ryan nor Mandy had ever brought this topic up to me. Lastly, I have talked to my superior about their behavior bothering me after this all happened, but he just brushed it off and said it was nothing to be worried about. I disagree. But, I left the meeting with him feeling embarrassed, holding back tears of frustration, and doubting my instincts. Their behavior is sounding off blaring alarms in the back of my mind, and I'm doing everything in my power to keep a distance from them, but I feel helpless. What should I do? Am I overreacting? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Edit 1. I would like to extend a huge thank you to everyone who's given me advice or support. You guys made me tear up from all of your support, encouragement, and wonderful advice. I don't feel so alone with this problem anymore, and I thank you all for taking the time to read what I wrote and to give me the help I wanted so badly. On another note, I'm heading to bed soon and will answer any other posts, questions, and comments tomorrow. I will also add a few facts that keep popping up in the questions. My organization has no HR department. It's a small office. My boss is the head of my office and there is no one above him. My boss is also the volunteer recruiter / manager / boss, not me. I do logistics and I am technically not in charge of the volunteers we have. My interaction with a majority of our volunteers is minimal. Yes, I'm in the U.S. Edit 2. I tried responding to as many people as I could and will answer any more questions / comments later today. Bulletin. My boss is not in today, and I don't know where he is. I haven't heard a peep. I have drafted an email to send to him regarding the meeting we had, per your advice. Thank you again, Reddit. Smile. I will also be sure to post an update about any further developments. Also adding another important fact, Ryan and my boss are friends. I know I said this in my original post, but I think a lot of people are missing this fact for some reason. Sorry guys. I should have bolded it. Again, I'll post any other clarifications that I can without revealing my identity. I don't want to get fired. Thanks guys. Smile. Update. First thing I did was send a follow-up email to my boss regarding the Ryan and Mandy situation, and I called the president of my organization's board, who will call Dan to discuss the problem with him. Following my call, Dan had me meet with him in person as soon as I was able to so I could tell him everything that was going on. When I finished explaining the situation in detail to him, Dan looked absolutely furious and demanded to know what, if anything, my boss had done to rectify the issue of Ryan and Mandy. I explained to him that my boss had done nothing to stop their harassment and downplayed my fear of the situation, likely because of the close relationship between my boss and Ryan. In closing of our meeting, Dan told me to document any further harassment and lack of action on my boss's part and to alert him as soon as it happens. A few days later, I had a follow-up meeting with my boss regarding Ryan and Mandy's harassment. While my boss seemed to listen to my concerns this time, he also kept the meeting brief and promised action, although he would not specify what that action pertained to. The next day, I was CC'd on an email that my boss sent to Ryan about a phone call he'd placed to him and highlighting a few points such as, don't close the door to Volunteer Throw's office and don't say X phrases to Volunteer Throw. I honestly couldn't believe my boss didn't cut Ryan and Mandy from our volunteer team and felt frustrated all over again, and forwarded the email to Dan. The day following the email, I came into work to find a teddy bear on my desk with no indication of where it came from, no note, card, etc. Thinking Ryan had been in my office, I asked one of the office assistants and he said that my boss had put it there and Ryan had not been in the office that day. I asked my boss why he put the bear on my desk and he flat out denied it. Even when I told him that one of my coworkers had seen him put it there, he still denied it. I was very puzzled and sent an email to Dan about the situation. The next day, I run into Ryan outside of my office while walking with my boss, and he made a remark about wanting to sleep with me. In front of my boss. So what does my boss do? He laughs. He laughs and agrees with Ryan. He gives Ryan a high five. Right in front of me. My boss apparently fantasized about getting me in bed just like Ryan did. That made me so angry that I felt my jaw lock up and my hands clenched like a bear trap. I didn't have any time to confront either Ryan or my boss about their behavior right then because we were meeting with a client, but I immediately called Dan following the client meeting and left him a voicemail on his cell phone about the incident. Dan calls me back to ask me about the full story and I tell him everything. He asks me to email him the situation in great detail and promised me he'd be in contact with me before I went back to work on Monday. Fast forward to early Monday morning and I'm awake and getting ready for work. I get a brief call from Dan telling that I have his permission to take the afternoon off, so I happily oblige. Later that morning, I get another call from Dan stating to instead take the whole Monday off and to report to Dan's business the next morning instead of my office. I agree. As planned, on Tuesday morning I go to Dan's office at the time I would normally start work and he takes me into a conference room with 6 other people in it, the board members for my organization. Dan explains that he'd called an emergency meeting after I'd repeatedly emailed him the situation with Ryan and my boss both making comments about wanting to sleep with me, and they unanimously voted to terminate his contract Monday morning and evict him from the organization. Dan and the board members all apologized to me for what I endured there and informed me that Ryan and Mandy had both been informed that they are banned from volunteering with my organization in the future. They wouldn't go into many details about my boss being fired, but they did say that he wasn't cooperative. But I couldn't care any less, because my problems are gone at my organization. In other news, I no longer work at this organization. During the problems at work I applied, interviewed for, and accepted my dream job in another state and have since moved. So, I really couldn't be happier about my life right now. Thanks.